What if a book could see into the darkest corners of your mind? What if it could read your nightmares, and bring them to life? Tonight, we're diving into the chilling legend of the Whispering Codex, a book said to hold the power to unravel your deepest fears. But be warned, once you open its pages, there's no closing it. If you're new here, welcome to the channel where we unravel the darkest tales of horror, mystery, and the supernatural. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming. Let's begin. The legend begins in the small, fog-shrouded town of Hollow's End, nestled deep in the Pacific Northwest. There's a library no one speaks of after dark. The Hollow's End archive isn't just a place for dusty tomes or forgotten records, it's a vault for secrets. And in the winter of 2024, Elara Voss, a 32-year-old rare book curator with a knack for uncovering the obscure, stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to find. Elara had come to Hollow's End chasing a rumor, a whisper among collectors about a book called the Whispering Codex. Said to be older than the written word itself, the Codex was no ordinary book. Its pages, according to legend, didn't contain stories, they contained you. Your fears. Your nightmares. Your secrets. And once you read it, it read you back. Elara wasn't a believer in the supernatural. She'd spent her career debunking myths about cursed manuscripts, from the Voynich manuscript to the Necronomicon. But something about the Codex felt wrong. The air around it was heavy, like it carried the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights. The trail had led her here, to Hollow's End, after an anonymous tip pointed her to the archive. The librarian, a frail woman named Ms. Harrow, had warned her. Some books aren't meant to be opened, Ms. Voss. Some books open you. Elara dismissed it as small-town superstition, until she found the Codex hidden in a locked vault, buried beneath a pile of 17th-century grimoires. What Elara didn't know, what no one could have told her, was that the Codex wasn't just a book. It was a mirror. A predator. A parasite. And it had been waiting for her. When she opened it, the pages were blank at first, but ink began to bleed onto them, forming words in a language she didn't recognize. The whispers grew louder, forming fragmented words: see, know, fear. Before we continue, let's take a moment to talk about the history of cursed books in literature. Because the Whispering Codex isn't the first tale of a book that holds unnatural power. Analysis: Cursed books in literature from H.P. Lovecraft's fictional Necronomicon to the real-life Codex Gigas, known as the Devil's Bible. Humanity has long been fascinated by the idea of books that carry a curse. These aren't just stories, they tap into a primal fear, that knowledge can be dangerous. That words can wound. The Necronomicon, for example, was Lovecraft's invention, a grimoire said to drive its readers mad with forbidden knowledge. While fictional, it inspired countless horror stories and even real-world hoaxes. Then there's the Codex Gigas, a 13th-century manuscript rumored to have been written with the devil's help. Its sheer size, over 3 feet tall, and its eerie illustrations make it a legend in its own right. Why are we so drawn to these stories? It's not just about the supernatural, it's about the psychology of fear. Books represent knowledge, and knowledge represents power. But what happens when that power turns against you? When the act of reading becomes a descent into your own mind's darkest corners? Psychologically, cursed book stories exploit our fear of losing control. They play on the idea that something as simple as reading, something we do every day, could unravel our sanity. This ties directly to the Whispering Codex, which doesn't just tell a story, it knows you. It's like a nightmare tailored to your deepest insecurities. Let's get back to Elara and find out what happens when the Codex starts to whisper. But first, if you're enjoying this deep dive into horror and mystery, smash that like button and leave a comment below. Have you ever heard of a cursed book, or is there a legend from your hometown you'd love us to cover? Let's keep the conversation going. The first nightmare: Elara couldn't stop reading. The words in the Codex weren't in any language she recognized, yet she understood them. They weren't instructions or stories, they were memories. Her memories. Her fears. Her nightmares. It was like the book was inside her head. She saw things she hadn't thought about in years. The forest. The shadow. The voice calling her name. The first nightmare was vivid, visceral. Elara found herself back in the forest of her childhood, a place she'd sworn she'd never return to. As a child, she'd gotten lost during a camping trip, separated from her parents for hours. She'd heard something, someone, calling her name, but when she followed the voice, it led her deeper into the woods. Now, the Codex was bringing it all back. But this wasn't just a memory, it was worse. The shadow in the forest had a form now, a shape that shifted and twisted, always just out of sight. And it wasn't just calling her name, it was singing. She woke up screaming. The book was still open, and the pages were different. They had her handwriting. Her childhood drawings. How was that possible? Elara tried to close the book, but it wouldn't budge. The pages felt alive, warm to the touch, as if they were breathing. She called Ms. Harrow, the librarian, but the line was dead. The motel's Wi-Fi was down. And outside, the fog around Hollow's End had thickened, swallowing the town in a gray haze. Elara was alone. Or so she thought. Because the Codex wasn't just a book, it was a presence. And it was watching her. Analysis, the psychology of nightmares. Let's pause the story for a moment to dive into the science of nightmares. Because what Elara's experiencing isn't just a spooky tale, it's rooted in how our brains process fear. Nightmares, especially recurring ones like Elara's, often stem from the amygdala, the brain's fear center. When we're stressed or traumatized, the amygdala can hijack our sleep, turning memories into vivid, terrifying dreams. Sleep disorders like night terrors or sleep paralysis can amplify this effect, making nightmares feel real. In Elara's case, the Codex seems to be tapping into her unresolved trauma, her childhood experience in the forest. There's another layer here, the concept of bibliomancy, or divination through books. In ancient times, people believed books could reveal hidden truths. The Codex takes this a step further. It doesn't just reveal truths, it creates them, pulling your nightmares into reality. This ties into the psychological concept of intrusive thoughts. Unwanted, distressing ideas that invade our minds. The Codex is like an intrusive thought made physical, a book that forces you to confront what you've buried. Before we dive back into Elara's story, let's hear from you. Have you ever had a recurring nightmare that felt too real? Drop it in the comments below, and if this video's giving you chills, hit that subscribe button to join our community of horror fans. We're just getting started. The second nightmare. Elara tried to leave Hollow's End the next morning, but her car wouldn't start. The mechanic in town said the battery was fine, something else was wrong, something he couldn't explain. The fog hadn't lifted, and the townsfolk avoided her gaze, whispering among themselves. Back at the motel, Elara couldn't resist the Codex. It was like an addiction, pulling her back despite her fear. She told herself she'd only read one more page, just one, to understand what it wanted. But the Codex had other plans. The pages now showed a new scene, a decrepit mansion, its windows glowing with an unnatural green light. The whispers formed a chant: enter, see, become. This wasn't her memory. She'd never been there. Why was it showing her this? The second nightmare was different. It wasn't a memory, it was a vision. The mansion felt alive, its halls shifting and stretching like a labyrinth. And at its heart was a room, sealed with a heavy iron door. Behind it, Elara heard voices, not whispers, but screams. When she woke, the Codex was open to a new page, a detailed sketch of the mansion, drawn in her own hand. But she'd never drawn it. Her fingers were stained with ink, and her nails were cracked, as if she'd been clawing at something in her sleep. Elara was unraveling. The Codex wasn't just showing her nightmares, it was changing her. She started hearing the whispers even when the book was closed. They followed her, echoing in the bathroom mirror, in the hum of the motel's air conditioner. And then she saw it, the shadow from her childhood, standing at the edge of her vision. Analysis, symbolism and themes. Let's step back and unpack the symbolism in Elara's story. The Codex isn't just a book, it's a metaphor for the human psyche. The blank pages that fill with her fears represent the way our minds project our anxieties onto the world. The mansion, with its sealed door, is a classic symbol of repressed trauma, something Elara is trying to keep locked away. Horror often uses locked doors to symbolize secrets we're afraid to confront. In the Whispering Codex, the door isn't just a physical barrier, it's a psychological one. Elara's nightmares are forcing her to face what she's buried, whether she's ready or not. This also ties into the broader theme of cursed objects in horror. Whether it's the One Ring in The Lord of the Rings or the puzzle box in Hellraiser, these objects represent temptation and consequence. The Codex tempts Elara with knowledge, but at a cost: her sanity, her identity, maybe even her life. We're halfway through Elara's story, and things are about to get darker. If you're hooked, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. And let us know in the comments, what would your nightmare look like if the Codex read you? The town's secret. Desperate for answers, Elara sought out the town's historical society. If anyone knew about the Codex, it would be there. But the townsfolk were cagey, their answers vague. Some things are best left alone, one old man muttered before slamming his door. Finally, she found someone willing to talk, a retired professor named Dr. Linus Crane, who'd studied Hollow's End's history for decades. He agreed to meet her at the Historical Society, but only after dark. Crane said, "The Codex isn't a book, Ms. Voss. It's a vessel. A trap. It's been in Hollow's End for centuries, passed from one poor soul to another." According to Crane, the Codex appeared in the 1600s, brought by a mysterious traveler who vanished soon after. The townsfolk tried to burn it, but the flames wouldn't touch it. Instead, those who tried to destroy it were plagued by nightmares, some driven to madness. Crane revealed something else. The mansion from Elara's nightmare wasn't just a dream. It was real. Blackthorn Manor, a ruined estate on the outskirts of town, had been abandoned since the 1800s after a series of unexplained deaths. Locals believed it was tied to the Codex. Against Crane's warnings, Elara decided she had to see the manor for herself. If the Codex was showing her Blackthorn, there had to be a reason. Blackthorn Manor loomed like a wound in the landscape. Its walls were blackened, as if scorched, yet no record of a fire existed. Elara felt the Codex vibrating in her bag, urging her forward. Every step felt like a descent into the Codex itself. The whispers grew louder, forming words she couldn't ignore. Open the door, face the truth. She found it at the end of a long corridor, the iron door from her nightmare, exactly as she'd seen it. What lay behind the door wasn't just a room, it was the heart of the Codex's power. Elara knew that opening it might destroy her, but the book's pull was too strong. She had to know. When she opened the door, a blinding light poured out. Analysis. The allure of supernatural horror. Why are we so drawn to stories like the Whispering Codex? Supernatural horror taps into our fear of the unknown, the things we can't explain or control. It's not just about jump scares, it's about confronting the limits of our reality. The Codex, with its ability to read nightmares, is a perfect example of this. It's not just a monster, it's a reflection of our own fears, personalized and inescapable. This is why horror resonates, it forces us to face what we'd rather ignore. We're nearing the climax of Elara's story. If you're still with us, hit that like button and share this video with your fellow horror fans. And let us know in the comments, would you open the door? The truth behind the door. The light faded, revealing a circular chamber within Blackthorn Manor. The walls were covered in runes, and at the center was a pedestal with an open Codex, not Elara's, but an older, larger version. The chamber was a shrine to the Codex. Its walls pulsed with the same energy Elara had felt from the book, and the air was thick with whispers, hundreds of voices, all speaking at once. Elara approached the pedestal. The larger Codex's pages flipped on their own, showing glimpses of other people's nightmares, burning cities, drowning seas, faceless figures. She realized it wasn't just her nightmares. It was everyone's. The Codex wasn't one book, it was many, a network of vessels scattered across time, each feeding on the fears of its reader. And Blackthorn Manor was its origin, a place where the boundary between reality and nightmare blurred. The chamber began to shift, the walls closing in. The whispers formed a single voice, deep and commanding, "You are mine." Elara faced a choice, destroy the Codex and risk her sanity, or walk away and let it claim another victim. But the book had one final nightmare to show her, a vision of herself, consumed by the shadow from her childhood, becoming part of the Codex forever. Defiant, Elara said, "You don't own me. Not anymore." She grabbed the larger Codex and hurled it into a brazier of glowing coals. The book screamed, a human scream. As it burned, the chamber shook, and the runes on the walls faded. Elara stumbled out of Blackthorn Manor as it collapsed, the fog lifting for the first time in days. Her own Codex, still in her bag, was blank again, its power gone. But the whispers lingered in her mind, a reminder of what she'd faced. The legacy of the Codex. Elara survived the Codex, but she was never the same. Back in Seattle, she published a paper on its history, carefully omitting its supernatural elements, and vowed never to open it again. But the whispers never fully stopped. Some nights, she'd wake up with ink on her hands, as if she'd been writing in her sleep. Her notebook was filled with sketches she didn't remember drawing, runes, shadows, the iron door. The legend of the Whispering Codex lives on, a cautionary tale about the dangers of seeking forbidden knowledge. It reminds us that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If you love this deep dive into the Whispering Codex, give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more chilling tales every week. Let us know in the comments, what's the scariest book you've ever read, real or fictional? And if you want us to cover another cursed object, drop your suggestions below. This video was a massive undertaking, so a huge thank you to our team and our amazing community for supporting us. If you want to dive deeper into the world of horror, check out our Patreon for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes access, and early video releases. Until next time, keep your doors locked, and your nightmares buried. Good night.